Welcome to BAASS Connect Virtual 2021. Today's event is on Sage 300 Financial and Operational. My name is Anna McNally, and I will be presenting this session on Sage 300 tips and tricks for the financial modules. Please post your questions in the question box located to the right side of your screen, and we will answer them during the Q&A session later today. Sage 300 financial modules include accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, admin, and common services are shared between the financial and operational modules. Here's an overview of what we will cover in today's session. Help resources, including Sage tools and shortcuts, printer destination functions, including emailing financial statements, how to export or import information using the import templates provided by Sage, how to report on error batches quickly, how to use quick mode entry and accounts payable, receivable, and the general ledger to improve data entry, and of course, customizing your Sage desktop. Under the Sage Help icon, users can access various information. Help topics will launch 300 documentation and resources. What's new will take you to the latest release notes for the version of Sage you're currently using. Product documentation will give you access to Sage user manuals, which can be viewed or printed anytime. Online community posts, Sage 300 announcements, news, and alerts. Easily access Sage forums, blogs, and videos on variation of topics. Submit product ideas is a great way to let Sage know what you'd like to see Sage implement. You can also view other customers' ideas and vote on them. Sage takes these recommendations into consideration for future product releases. Sage has help topics on such things like data entry tools and shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, modifying your Finder tables. Sage has two print destination options, one used by all modules, which is accessed through the ribbon, and one that's specifically for financial statements. A tip is, instead of printing your financial statements and then scanning them in to email, use the email function under Print Financial Statement. You can import and export information for most action windows. An action window would be any window where you can add and modify information in Sage 300. You can select the export or import function by selecting the menu on the top ribbon called File, and then select Import and Export. If you don't see that option, that means that you do not have access and you would have to contact your Sage administrator to grant you that access. Sage ships with templates that allow users to import large quantities of data, either for setting up their Sage 300 or for maintaining. These templates or import templates can be found with the Sage data under a folder called Import Templates. Just as a reminder, when you're importing anything into Sage, make sure you have a backup prior to making any changes to the data. From time to time, you may receive an entry error called batch errors. Those batch errors are simple to find if you know where to go. So depending on where you receive it, what module, open up the batch status listing, select the original batch that was posted that you received the error from, and then if you scroll to the very end of the batch listing screen, there's a column there that says number of errors. It will display there how many errors were in the particular batch that you tried to post. To view what those errors are, just double click on that number and it will open up a document to tell you what the error is. You can then choose to fix the error or you can delete the batch. It's recommended that if you post any subledger entries to the ledger, so subledger being accounts payable, accounts receivable, if you post them to the GL, it is not recommended that you delete them in the GL. It is recommended that you fix the batch, and you can do so by printing the error batch listing. Using the quick entry mode is available in accounts payable and receivable and in the general ledger. To access it, you open an entry window, and from the settings on the top, the drop-down settings called Settings, you could select Quick Mode. Quick Mode is designed to help lessen data entry. So you can also customize your screen so that the Sage user who's using Sage has a better experience. And you can do that by creating a new folder and setting up icons in that folder, and I'll show you that in a minute. You could set up links, so links to important websites or to, let's say, Excel within your Sage 300. You can create icon shortcuts. You can take your Finder windows and customize what's viewed in your Finder window for easy lookup or easy analytical. Your data entry window can be modified so that you have less fields to populate. And of course, you can have some icons where you can have multiple copies open for either data entry or lookup purposes. So let's log into Sage and take a look. So here we are in Sage 300. Let's look at some of the things that we reviewed on our PowerPoint in Sage. First thing we reviewed was the help. So under the help icon, there's lots of information here that you can get. One is you can click on the help topics, which will click on and show you where that takes you. It takes you to Sage documentation and resources. You can also click on the what's new, which will also open up on another window and tell you what's new with the version that you're currently using. Product documentation you can also find here. So if you want a user's manual, this is the place that you would go. The online community is my favorite place to go when I want to search for a new video or a new idea or some resources within the community. To click on videos, you can just click on the videos and you'll see that there are different playlists from order entry improvements to starting a new year in Sage. To submit a product idea or for you to vote and view other product ideas, you would select Submit Product Idea. That is the help function. Another way to use the help function is be in a screen that you have a question on. So for example, if we open up AP vendors and vendors, and we have a question about a specific field, we could use our F1 key, and our F1 key will actually launch the help for that particular area. So because we were in AP screens, it brought up the help for AP screen, and from there we can click on these hyperlinks to get additional information. So the F1 key is one of the many function keys or shortcut keys that you can use within Sage 300. To find out more about other shortcut keys, you can type in to the search tips, and you'll find that there is a listing of all types of tips and tricks you can use within the Sage 300. I'm going to click on Tips and Tools. And we can see by here below, we have hyperlinks to different areas where we can have other additional tips and tricks or tips and tools within Sage 300. Data entry tools and shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts for those who prefer to use a keyboard as opposed to a mouse. So let's actually click on one of these so you can see what type of information that you'll find. So here's some data entry tools and shortcuts that you could use. I use these on my day-to-day function inside of Sage 300. For example, did you know that if you used your F4 on a date field, that it will pop up your calendar? Or if you used F5 in a Finder, it will open up your Finder window. Or F7. So if you're curious about the different types of shortcuts on your keyboard or different tools that Sage offers with their program, click on the Finder, and in the Finder search engine here, type in tips. When you find a document that you want to print within the Sage help, you have the option to click on the printer and print the document. Now let's talk about emailing and print destinations. So you have a print destination here where you can have 4 options. If you do choose print preview, when you're printing a document to a print preview, you then have the option to print it to a printer or export it out to PDF or Excel. In the General Ledger, under Financial Reporter, there's an option for a print destination as well, which is separate than the main menu's print destination. Down here at the bottom, it allows the user to generate a statement and directly email a recipient instead of you having to first generate, print, save, and then attach it as an email. To do that, you select email as an option. You select your statement and the date. And when you click on the print button, it will pop up another screen that will allow you to actually name what the statement is. So I'm just going to call it test, and I'm going to let it default to what I have here. But you can certainly create a folder, or you can let it default to the standard. Click on OK. It's then going to generate the financial statement. And then once the statement is completed, it will actually pop up in a window to be emailed. So if I minimize this, there's my email. I can then address it to whomever I want, and there's my attachment. Just a quick way to send a statement to an individual without having to first generate it, print it, save it, scan it, and attach it. Let's look at error batches. So when you get an error batch, I'm going to show you an example of one. So if you go under Invoice Batch Listing, and I just so happen to have an error batch here. So to find what caused the error so we can fix it, you would go to the original batch. So the error batch actually tells you the original batch which it was created from. So it says it was created from batch 59, one entry. If I go to batch 59, I see that there was 2 entries totaling $1,732. But the error batch is only 1 entry, so only 1 entry didn't get processed. So to find the error, I click on the original batch and I scroll to the very, very end of the batch listing. Under a column that says number of errors, they would list how many errors were found in this batch. So for example, if you had a batch with 100 entries and 6 of those entries were errors, you would see 6 listed here. So to see what that error is, you just double click on the highlighted item on the screen where it says number 1. It's going to open up your AP Posting Errors report. You do not have to select anything in here. The system already knows that it is an invoice batch and what posting sequence it was in. You just click on the print button. And this will display in a print preview what the error was. So let's increase the size of this so that you can see it better. So it's saying that the net invoice amount is not equal to the net distributed amount for batch 51, from batch 51 entry 1. So for me to fix it, I know exactly what I need to do to fix it. I'm going to exit out and close. Now, since we're in accounts payable, let's look at the quick entry mode, and let's use this batch down here since it's open. So the quick entry mode is designed to help you with repetitive information either on the top, which we call the header, the journal entry header, or sorry, the invoice entry header, it's a mouthful there, or the lines on the bottom. So to get to the quick mode, you would click on the settings, quick mode, and then you'll see that you have 2 options for quick modes. I'm just going to unselect these for now. You can choose to select both options or just one option. So an example of how you would use quick mode could very well be, let's say you're entering accounts payable batch and you have several invoices from the same vendor, and they could potentially even be the same date. So what you could do is you can select that you want your entry quick mode to be vendor number. And what that means is each time I add a new entry to this batch, it's going to default to that vendor number until I change it. It's going to default to the document date. And just for giggles, we also put job related. I can also turn on the quick mode for lines. If I want to copy information from line to line, I would select what I want to copy. And that doesn't mean that I can't change it. It just means that it will quickly copy it down to the next line. So let's test that. Here's one entry that was incomplete, but let's create a brand new entry. So let's click the new button up at the top. And now I'm entering number 2, and it defaulted automatically to that vendor. I did not have to select the vendor. Now at this point, I could choose to change the vendor to a different vendor, or I can keep this vendor and continue on. So that was the entry settings that we selected. The bottom settings are for the lines. So if I insert an extra line here, I told the system, or I selected it to copy down these fields so that I didn't have to enter them. Now I can select this at any time and change it. I can also change the number. So just because it's copying doesn't mean that it can't be changed. Another point I'd like to make is, let's say you received a change of address with your vendor's invoice. What I like to do is, instead of putting it on the side where I might forget, I can actually click on this plus button as if I was going to set up a brand new vendor. And because it has that vendor already in memory, it brings it up. And right now I can change this address. And then I can hit the save button and close, and my changes are already done. I did not have to close out of my entry screen to open up my batch or to open up my vendor to make that change. So quick mode can be found in accounts receivable AP, accounts payable and accounts receivable invoice batch entries. Quick mode can also be found under the general ledger, under the entry, right here. You have normal mode and quick mode. So this quick mode is specific to the lines below. All right, let's look at a tip on customizing a finder screen. Or maybe not a finder in accounts payable. Let's go to accounts receivable. AR customers and customers. You can follow this process that I'm going to do in this finder for any finder within the system. So I'm going to click on a finder, or I can use my F5 key. And from here, these are the options that I have. These are predefined fields that come with Sage, but perhaps I don't want this information, or I want more information on this screen so that I can quickly look at important information as I'm recording my customer. Up at the top here, there's an item called, or a drop-down called Settings, Columns. On the left-hand side of the screen are all the fields that are available for me to view. And on the right-hand side of the screen are all the fields that have been selected for me to view. So let's say I want to see vendor number, vendor name, perhaps their status, perhaps their terms, codes, and what their current balance is. So to do that, I can take the fields that I don't want and I can exclude them. And then on the left-hand side of my screen, search for the fields that I do want so that I could see the information. So I'm going to scroll down and select terms because I think that would be useful. And I want to select the balance. So I can select the balance in the customer's currency and in functional currency. And maybe even the last time I sent them a statement. That might be useful information to have. So now, as you can see, that information is on my screen. So this might be more useful to me than having the previous view. To save these settings anywhere in Sage, I recommend that for the first time that you modify your Finder, go under Global Settings and click Go to Filter first. What this does is this will allow the system to save my settings, how I choose to find by, and the settings that I have here. So I prefer to find by, let's say, customer name, and this is how I want my screen to look. And let's say contains. So next time I'm in this screen and I select this Finder, it's going to keep exactly how I prefer to see this Finder for my user preference. So I've just customized a Finder in a window to how I want to see the system. Let's look at a few more things about customizing our screens. So one of the things that you could do is you can actually create a link to a website, especially if it's a website that you're going to find useful. Instead of closing out a Sage, save your link inside of Sage and launch it from within the system. How to add a new link or how to add a new folder, you would right-click anywhere in Sage. You would click on the new, and then you would have these options. You can create a folder, you can insert a macro, a report, or a program. So I inserted Dun & Brad currency link to the internet. When I double click on this, it's actually going to take me to that screen, to that location, and I can quickly use it to maybe make some currency changes between different countries. Another thing that I could do is under any one of these modules or at the highest level, I can create a folder. And this folder could be where I have my reports, or it could be an area where I keep most of the icons that I use. So I'm just going to create a folder called My AP Reports. And now you see it here. And from that folder, you can drag in important information. So because the folder is created here, I can also see it in the group tree. There's my folder right there. So I can drag in information or drag in icons. I can drag in an action icon or a report into my reports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under vendor reports and I'm going to bring in my 1099s. And I'm also going to bring in my aged payables. And it doesn't have to be specific to only accounts payable. I can go into my GL and bring in my chart of accounts into that area. So now when I click on my reports, I see the specific items that I clicked and dragged and dropped in this area. So that's just a way for you to take what's already in the system and move it into a location in Sage that you will A, remember it, and B, find the most useful. My last tip that I have to offer you is for General Ledger users. Under the General Ledger GL accounts, from this first icon here, you can view, add, and modify all these other items, with the exception of the create accounts. It's underutilized, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So if you want to know quickly what the balance is of an account, or what the balance of an account was perhaps a few years ago, and anytime you see this, if you use your F7 key, is the equivalent of clicking on the Go button. So from the screen, you can open up the GL account code and change how it's set up or change the naming of it. You can view any transactions. You can do comparisons this year to last year or this year to budget. You can view and update your budget, and you can look at history as well. So if I go back to, let's say, 2021, and I'm going to increase the size of my screen. So here's an example of an account with balance. If I click on the history, it's going to show me the details per period. So the net change in balance. If I click on budget, it will show me any budgeted items that I have for this particular account, and I can update the budget. I can do comparisons, and the comparison could be actuals to actuals or actuals to budgets. It's very useful. And you can also take a busy data entry screen and remove fields that you're not using. Again, thank you very much for your time today. Questions will be answered during our Q&A session at the end of the day.